Well, hello everybody. It's really an honor for me to be here to join you. I am so excited about this program and observing and just the joy and a privilege. I've been so blessed to be getting to know some of you and having conversation and learning from you. And I'm just so excited that this gathering finally in the second cohort is happening and that I can be a part of it in this way. So thank you again to Professor Cha for the invitation and just being able to join you in this way. Now, as Professor Cha said, I'm just going to be offering a few reflections about the last couple of days and also about the significance of a program like TICI in the global context. So it's just a few simple reflections. So as Professor Cha said, I currently live in Melbourne, Australia, but I'm actually a second generation British-born Chinese, born and raised in London. And like many of you, I have had the opportunity of observing immigrant congregations and migrant churches in other places. And I know that some of you have lived in other countries and have been involved in missions. For myself and my family, we've lived in South Africa, we've lived in China, we lived in, of course, the UK, US, and now Australia. And my wife is, believe it or not, she confirmed with me this morning that she is a fifth generation Australian Chinese. Can you believe that? I had to double check with her and I had to say, can you just double check that with your mom? Because she wrote this, she did this family tree and then she sent it to me on WhatsApp. And the first generation of her family were married in Queensland, which is, in Australia, in 1884. So that's like at least 100 years ahead of a lot of other migrants. So it's a very settled community, in the Chinese community in Australia. But something like this initiative is long overdue over there, right? Yeah, just trying to think about these issues. Well, let me just start by telling you a story about a friend of mine. And what there was one time, he's Chinese, and he also had the opportunity to be involved in immigrant church ministry and also was able to live in different places. And there was one time we got together and we were having a conversation and we were comparing experiences of the Chinese immigrant church in different places. And he was actually going through a very painful experience at the time and in his own migrant church. And as we compared, these different places where we've been and thought about the issues in the Chinese church, the Chinese immigrant church, he turned to me and with a very burdened sigh, and even actually with a tear in his eye, he kind of said to me, "Hey, David, why is it that wherever you go, it seems like some of these problems of the Chinese immigrant church are the same everywhere you go?" Perhaps some of us here, regardless of whether it's Chinese immigrant church or other immigrant churches, you can reflect or resonate with some of those statements and those issues. Difficult, maybe painful experiences that we've all been through in our immigrant churches that have really not just happened in recent times, but maybe for some of you for a long time, you've had long ministries within the immigrant church. But at the same time, we also see immigrant churches as how they've blessed us in our ministries and our families. So it's kind of like we're torn often in our own contexts. Well, did you know that in a recent survey of global Christianity, I was quite shocked by this. In 1970, there were 13,100 denominations in the world. That's 1970. In the year 2000, there were 31,100 denominations in the world. And in mid-2024, there are 47,100 denominations in the world. And I heard that even just in Korea alone, you can correct this stat if you like, but I was told there are over 200 Presbyterian denominations in Korea alone. Now, while we might try to be as positive as we can, see the positive side of these statistics and say, well, there's variety in world Christianity, and there's some truth to that. There's no escape from us seeing that, well, there's a lot of schism. There's a lot of schism and division in world Christianity at the moment. And intergenerational conflict is a part of that, is a contributing story in that narrative. And yet, we know, again, studies have shown very clearly that the immigrant churches are going to be a very significant and growing part of our Christian landscape globally. Scholars, they've said that this age that we live in, they call it the age of migration, is unprecedented in terms of the amount of migration happening these days, more than any other previous generation. And so we know that migrant communities and what we are talking about here at TICI is very, very significant in the global scheme of things, and not just in the West as well. And not only are immigrant churches here to stay, but they are growing numerically. And so just to take an example from my own current context in Melbourne, Australia, for the immigrant churches who are joining the mainstream denominations, they are making a very significant impact. And so, for example, I was in a conversation not that long ago, actually, with the state director of the state that Melbourne is in, called Victoria. And he was a state director of the Baptist Union in Victoria, the Baptist Church. And he said to me that if it wasn't for the migrant churches, and they have over 100 what they call language other than English migrant congregations, different language groups. They said if it wasn't for them, they would be in serious decline, like serious decline. And when I was comparing it with the Anglican churches and also the Pentecostal churches, they said the same thing, that if it wasn't for the migration. So we can see that migration and the immigrant churches are very significant in even the Australian landscape. And so even within that denomination, it's very significant. Now, the problem is that we have these growing immigrant churches, but we need healthy immigrant churches, right? We need healthy immigrant churches. And as far as I can observe so far, for example, in Melbourne, denominations seldom give support, even though these are the really this growing sector of the denomination. And there are certainly no programs like TICI going on. And of all the denominations and the groups that are doing the best in this, I think the Pentecostals, brothers and sisters, are doing the best in this at the moment. But then the Anglican or the Baptist wouldn't necessarily be invited to those gatherings. And so, there's a missiologist and the president of Asbury Seminary, Dr. Timothy Tennant, quite a number of years ago in his book, Invitation to World Missions, he talked about what he called megatrends in the world of global Christianity. And he said that now with all these different denominations, we need to aim for what he called a deeper ecumenism. That is, we need to, in spite of our denominational boundaries, we need to cross those boundaries to collaborate and partner more than we have done in the past. This is what TICI is doing, actually. The different denominations and different backgrounds. Some of you are Presbyterian, some of you are independent. It's cross-denominational. And so this is very significant. And because at the moment, at least in Australia, that kind of cross-denominational partnership and collaboration isn't really happening for the immigrant churches. And so these are very significant matters as I think about this program. When Dr. Cha told me about the TICI, I got very excited. It wasn't just that Dr. Cha was talking about immigrant church, because I heard Dr. Cha do that in classes. I know that he was concerned about the immigrant church. And it wasn't even that this was a funded experience so that you all get to go to this. It wasn't even that. It was because when he described the process and the actual program, this is an opportunity to build these lifelong friendships and this community where the global scheme of things, this has not been addressed so intentionally as a process, and where people are being able to gather, not just, and it wasn't even just Asian churches, there are other immigrant churches being represented. So I was so excited when I heard about this idea. We're talking about immigrant church and even unity, but it's unity for the sake of mission and mission impact.